All right, what is up, you heathens and demons, you blasphemous, beautiful people? Welcome back to A Raging Atheist. I'm Nakasuchi. We got John and we got Fay the Most Gracious. I'm so super excited for this conversation. What's up, Fay? We'll let you introduce yourself, and then John, you can introduce yourself. I'm fairly certain I got Fay's link in the description. For some reason, I didn't put John's because I'm a bad friend. So, what's up, Fay?
Things are good. Today's been really hectic because I'm dealing with my own stuff, and then I'm being smeared by someone within our own community. So that's been fun to deal with for 2 days. But other than that, been good.
Yeah, I've noticed a little bit of it on Twitter. And I know, John, you've interacted quite a bit. What's up, John? Are
Hey,
you as tired as I am after the late stream we had last night?
I mean, I'm a little tired. Was able to get like 7 hours sleep, and I've been pounding the coffee, so I should be okay. I have to stay up, shill, because at 4 o'clock, I'm going to have Nicholas Lamar Suter on my channel, The Amateur Conversationalist, at 4 p.m. Eastern. And I also want to mention I am just now, if I can make it work here, putting a link in the chat because there it is. Because our friend Puffalopagus, Kyle, and there was some cute confusion on Twitter the other day. It's not Kyle Curtis, our friend Kyle. I'm not going to say his last name, though his last name is on his GoFundMe page. But I just put a link to his GoFundMe in the chat. And if you could help Kyle out, his father passed last week, and he and his family are unable to pay for the funeral. So if you could check his GoFundMe out and help him out, and if you could also please share that link on social media, it would be a big help.
Yeah. And I didn't realize people were mistaken Puffalufkus for Kyle Curtis.
Well, no, it was just one idiot that I had tweeted about his GoFundMe and the loss of his father, and had put in parentheses next to his Twitter handle Kyle, because when you go to the GoFundMe, it has his name there, and I wanted people to know that was the person that was running the GoFundMe. They were the same person. And at any rate, I had tweeted this out about him losing his father and needing our help, and someone had responded back, funny as hell, LOL. And I went off on him big time, like, hey, what's so funny about someone losing their father? And then we DM'd back and forth. He said, oh, I thought you were talking about Kyle Curtis and making a joke. And I was just like, yeah, there's no way you could read that tweet.
Even if you were talking about him, even if you were talking about Kyle Curtis, what is funny about someone's dad dying?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it shouldn't really matter, but but you clearly said Puffaluffagus, and I'm sure. I mean, he's everywhere. He's in the live chats everywhere.
So, why you guys got me here today? What's going on?
We're gonna have a conversation. I am super stoked. For one, I take a lot of heat, but I'm a different type of atheist. A former Christian atheist than most. I think most are, a lot smoother around the edges than me. They come with intellectual arguments to where I attack your humanity. You come at me about morality, I'm going to show how you're not moral. So I take a lot of brunt from like the evangelical Christian community, especially a lot of brunt compared to other atheists, I would say. Like even like Mr. Atheist came out against the NIFB, and I still haven't heard anything about him receiving like the level of threats that I received, and he's way, way bigger than me. But when I look at your Twitter feed and see, and not just you, but other, since I've been started following you, I've the Twitter algorithm has started to show me other ex-Muslims and some of the things that they're dealing with, interacting with people that are still part of the faith. And what you guys go through is fucking insane. It's crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to let you kind of maybe start off, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and just this blatant animosity that gets thrown your guys' way because you're outside of that now, and you're free to be what you want to be without any of those limitations anymore.
Yeah. It's really weird to figure out where to start with that conversation because it literally comes from all sides. And as someone who used to be an Islamist, a fundamentalist, an extremist, whatever you want to call it, someone, for me, in my opinion, someone who was the most consistent with the teachings and didn't believe in any wishy-washy bullshit that a lot of people peddle. And I criticize people for that all the time. Like the guy that you were fighting with, John, Sabir, he's an Ahmadi. His people are persecuted all over the Islamic world because they're such a fringe sect, but he'll still act as though his version of Islam is like the majority version of Islam. But as someone who used to be a fundamentalist and someone who used to follow a 7th century lifestyle in the 21st century, it's kind of weird for me to be able to gauge the mindset of people who behave in this way. I don't know where to start because the hatred comes from the Muslim community, from fringe sects that we actually support frequently, especially the Ahmadi community because they're so small and because they're openly persecuted in places like Pakistan because they have blasphemy laws against them. It comes from the left because the left is sympathetic to Muslims, and for some reason they've combined their definition of Muslims with Islam, which is problematic in and of itself. It comes from the right because I'm brown. It comes from all sides, and it's really, really difficult to navigate. Like, I can't say whatever I want to say without first giving like 50 different disclaimers to make sure that I'm not hurting anyone's feelings. And even then, people's feelings get hurt, and I at that point I don't know what to do with it anymore. Over the last 2 days, I have been going back and forth with an LGBT. He identifies as, or they, sorry, identify as queer, but they still identify as Muslim. Now, I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can still align yourself with something that is so blatantly homophobic. But you know, it's your life and you do what you want with it. But we've been going back and forth, and he did a BBC radio show where he spoke about ex-Muslims and he heavily stereotyped us. And I called him out for that. And they just got very, very like defensive of their position without addressing any of the points. And I tried to make it as clear as possible that I'm not coming from a place of malice. I'm coming from, because we've been out with this person. Like, I've met this person. We've been out with them. We've partied with them. They gave me a lap dance at the last club we were at. Like we had a good time. So I tried to put it in a way where I let them know that I'm coming from a place of friendship, and I wanted to just correct this, and I felt that it was unfair that they had stereotyped us. And instead of addressing
real quick, I just want to jump in and just say, from someone who interacts with you quite a bit on Twitter, I just want to point out to you that you, Zara, if I'm saying her name correctly, and many other people, many other ex-Muslims have made it clear on more than one occasion on Twitter that you are completely against Islamophobia and that you are against the ideas of Islam, that you are not bigoted or want to see any hatred or animosity thrown at Muslims simply because they're Muslim. You know, so these people that interact with you and accuse you and other ex-Muslims of just being hateful bigots are so completely wrong. I mean, it's just a fact.
The problem with that argument is that we still grew up as Muslims. You know, we understand the kind of oppression that Muslims go through. We have Muslim family members. Yes, me in particular, I don't get along with my family members, but I would not want to see them removed from this country because I know my family members and they would get a lot worse if they were in a different country. I have Muslim friends. I made like a ton of Muslim friends in the last month, and it's really, really freeing to be able to have that and just be around that and make a snarky comment, and then everybody just laughs and nobody gets offended. It's so, so freeing. But when I'm on Twitter and I have like these different disagreements with people, they're so quick to just flip the racist card and be like, oh well, you're just a bigot. And one of the things that I had a problem with Farhan, who is the person in question, I make no bones about naming him at this point because he's a cunt. But he first of all said that we invite white supremacists to our circles, which is ridiculous, and that is not something that we do. We don't bar them from coming because we don't interview people who buy our tickets. Okay, and I genuinely don't think that if a white supremacist wants to come to our event that we should bar them anyway. It's a free country, you pay for a ticket, you come, it's it. And the second thing he said is that they had gone ahead and watched one of the podcasts I did with a group of young ex-Muslims, one of whom is in Pakistan. And he had taken one thing that I said out of that podcast and he had spun it way, way out of context. Because I was talking about how I used to think about gay people as a fundamentalist. And he had taken that quote and he had smeared me as if I was a homophobe.
Very Matt Powell like that.
Yeah, and and for me, I think when people see that I give my disclaimers, that I give people a chance, that I treat people with kindness, I think people view me as soft because I do that. And I really, really don't like that I have that reputation, because as soon as he did that, my inner hedonist just jumped out and was like, well, you can just fuck him up now because he's disgraced you for no reason.
Yeah.
And
and I stay away from Islam a lot because there is an element, especially here in America on the left, that if you try to call out the religion and the flaws of the religion, then it's different than calling out the flaws of Christianity. You're not going to be labeled a Christian phobe, although sometimes I do get labeled something along those lines. But you automatically get labeled an Islamophobe the moment you start talking about Islam in any way other than in any way that's critical of it. Then you're an Islamophobe, and it's like, no, I'm doing the same things that I'm doing against Christianity. I'm against the religion. I'm not against the people. But it's a thought every time I go into anything I do on Islam is I'm going to face backlash for that.
It's a strange kind of racism, I think, because Islam isn't a race, first of all. I don't think that you can be bigoted towards a set of ideas that was set up 1400 years ago. I just don't think that you can be a bigot towards that because it's a set of ideas. And when you criticize or mock ideas, the good ones will make it. So I don't know what you're worried about. But I think that it is a strange kind of racism to protect a group of people who are brown. Like, you're only disallowing this criticism because these people are brown minority. And that, like, if I was still a Muslim, I would personally find that offensive, even though it goes in line with my agenda, because I always felt as though what I believed should fall under criticism because I had faith in what I believed. If you only are insecure about what you believe, if you're insecure about what you believe. If you have faith, you don't mind that.
Yeah, that's always like, it's really hard for me to get Christians to come and defend their faith, and usually when I do, they're jokers like DJ Joker 12, Jill, Jesus is Lord. Yeah, they're people like that. They're bad faith actors that are going to come in and basically just lie their ass off, apologize for their Bible, which is they know it. They call it apologetics. You're apologizing for your Bible.
Yeah,
I don't fully get about, like, my religious community, so ex-religious community now, but Muslims that I've interacted with, is that when I was a fundamentalist, I didn't apologize for anything. I believed what I believed, and I made no bones about it. And I have like this inner, I like to call her fundamentalist Fay. There's like this inner voice in my brain that tells me, like, these are such weak people. And it's like a really bad, like negative, intrusive voice where anytime I speak to a Muslim and I raise the question of Muhammad married a child, and they'll be like, oh, in the time it was acceptable. No, it's acceptable.
You know,
By scripture,
oh, I'm
it
sorry.
is acceptable.
I mean, I've seen a lot of the interactions on Twitter, and yeah, it always boggles my mind when they raise the accusation of racism as if Islam is a race, and it's not. I mean, and as you said, because the vast majority of Muslims are brown, then they assume that any blowback to their ideas is racism, and they just simply don't know what racism actually is, I guess. The other thing is
people don't know. People don't know what racism is anymore.
I mean, and you said 1,400 years ago, and alluded to earlier that these people living a 7th century lifestyle in the 21st century, and one of the ironic things about that, living a 7th century lifestyle, but they're still on the computer, on Twitter, going after ex-Muslims, so they accept that part of the 21st century for some reason.
Well, yes and no. I think that the kind of the strain of Islam that I followed, I feel as though those people aren't really online as much as the other one, like the moderates are. And unfortunately, even the moderates are pretty extreme when it comes to apostasy and blasphemy and the LGBT community and women. Like, they're still not very moderate in that sense, but they aren't as extreme as the strain that I followed. So I think it varies.
Yeah, that's always been my issue with Islam, as I studied it, and I haven't studied it as near as much as I've studied Christianity. I do think I've studied it maybe a little bit more than most American ex-Christian atheists. I was really impressed with Muhammad and what he was trying to do at the time. Through my study, it really appeared like he came up with a really progressive solution to poverty, extreme poverty in Arabia at the time. He grew up pretty poor himself.
Well, that's not true at all. He was the grandson of the tribal leader.
Yeah, well, he was part of the Quraysh tribe, and I think once his mother was poor, but once she died, he was very young. He went to live with his rich ass uncle, and lived a very wealthy life. And that's where I think first started hearing about Christianity and Judaism, was along that caravan route.
He was a trader because Mecca was a trading center in Arabia.
Yeah.
So the woman that he married was a businesswoman, and he used to trade for her.
Mm. Yeah. I've studied his first wife was considerably older than him, right?
Yeah, she was 25. No, she was 40 and he was 25.
Yeah.
He was essentially a boy toy, because that was his employer as well. But yeah, I don't know. Times were different. After her, I think he just went a little crazy with all the wives.
Yeah, that's what I got from my research as well. He seemed to go a bit nuts after she died. But I saw it as somewhat of this progressive solution to the barbarisy of it. What was my point? I forgot my damn point. But it never had a reformation beyond that. Like Christianity had its reformation, and now you have these very liberal Christians that can pretty much rationalize most of the terrible things that the Bible says. Islam never had that reformation. That's the point I was trying to get to. I would like to ask you about that. More about it than I do.
So I've been asked this question, and I don't really know how to feel about it. But Christianity's reformation happened about 1,500 years in. So I think that we're in a very critical time period.
Yeah, it could be now
because we are 1,400 years in. With Islam. But in terms of Islamic Reformation, one of the biggest reasons why Islamic Reformation hasn't happened is because apostates have not been allowed to exist. The first instance of apostasy happened so soon after Muhammad died that the caliph at the time, who was Abu Bakr, who was the first caliph, actually decimated that entire tribe, and they had not actually apostated; they had just refused to pay the zakat, which is a pillar of Islamic faith, and he took that to mean that they had left the faith, and he decimated that entire tribe. And scholars who came afterwards had praised him by saying that if he didn't do that, then Islam would have faded away, which I feel like says a lot about Islam. But that's one of the reasons. Apostates are not allowed to abide. Fringe sects, so Islam, according to the classical sources, Muhammad predicted that there would be about 73 different branches of Islam, and only one would make it into heaven. So I think we probably have more than that by now, but all the fringe sects are persecuted. So even Shias, which is the second biggest denomination of Islam, they are persecuted. They're about 10 to 20% of all Muslims, and they're like, I still make jokes that Shias aren't really Muslims. So, and you know, it's all in good fun, but it's also a very true sentiment that most Sunnis hold. And the third thing is,
real quick question. Sorry to interrupt, but for those folks that are listening, and myself included, that aren't all that familiar with Islam, what is a caliph?
So a caliph is he's like the leader. So in an Islamic state, this is going to take a while. So after the Prophet died, he had passed down his leadership to a caliph. Now, there's a disagreement between different Muslims who the caliph should have been. Some people say it should have been Ali, who was the Prophet's cousin, but because Islam doesn't, or at least Sunni Islam doesn't really hold nepotism to be like a thing, the caliphate actually passed to Muhammad's best friend, who was Abu Bakr, who was the first caliph, and then there were three others who are considered like the four best, because they were the four that came straight after the Prophet Muhammad, even though some terrible atrocities happened while they were caliphs. But they are essentially the leader of the Islamic State in terms of politics and religion. It's not really like a pope. I've seen it compared to like the papacy and stuff like that, but it's not really like that because the pope has a religious standing, whereas the caliph doesn't necessarily have to have that.
Could it be comparable to, like, say, the Dalai Lama?
No, because he's not a spiritual leader. He's like a king.
Yeah, it's more like an emperor of an empire.
Yeah, he's like a king or an aziz or a sultan. And I think at one point after like the first 20 or so caliphs, they did actually start calling them kings and sultans, and governors.
It went all the way into the Ottoman Empire, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. But Ottomans are Turkish, and that's like a whole other thing. But the third reason why Islam hasn't reformed is that even within Sunni Islam, which is about 80% of Muslims, they can't change their religion. We have a concept called bid'ah, or innovations, and it's strictly prohibited to create new things in the religion. So we're not allowed to progress with it. I say we, I mean they. But those are the three main reasons. It's because apostates aren't allowed to exist. They are virulently just killed off. Any sects that come out of Sunni Islam are persecuted to filth, and innovations and progression is not something that exists within an Islamic concept. It's strictly prohibited. So that's where we're at with reform. And I genuinely think that there's a possibility for reform, but it won't come from changing Islam, because I don't think that that's possible, honestly, especially right now. But I do think that Muslims are slowly progressing by themselves without needing to change anything, because I feel like most moderate Muslims that I speak to are very ignorant about their religion when we talk about the hijab. And obviously I know all the ins and outs of hijab, and I have like 17 different sources, and they're just like, yeah, but it's in my heart. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's your faith, then that is your faith. I'm not going to sit here and disagree with you about that.
That's amazing, because we get the same shit from Christians. So, it's like, this is my belief, and you can't challenge my belief. Like, no, your belief is wrong, and it doesn't even correlate with what the damn Bible says.
Well, that's the other similarity to what you just said. is how many Christians who you could term as moderate Christians that really don't know that much about their own religion. I mean, it's so similar.
I still think, like, I don't really get people who leave Islam and then join Christianity. Maybe I'll get shit for that. But I always saw Christianity as a very wishy-washy kind of religion. Like, you just accept Jesus and you're free to go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, Ali asked, or I think it was last night during our conversation last night. It was a long one and it went late, so my brain is a little foggy. But one of the pagans asked if like, what do Christians do to actually worship? Because they, outside of Sunday, usually don't.
You eat his flesh and you drink his blood. That's as far as I know.
That was my answer last night. They're cannibals.
And that is the thing. Islam is different because in Islam, you are worshiping every day in certain ways, certain practices. It is muscle memory. It is ingrained in you.
You literally have your bones structure to pray. Like we pray 5 times a day. And there are specific ways of praying. If you do it wrong, someone is going to very aggressively correct you, because it's the most important thing about your faith is that you pray 5 times a day. So to go from that to, oh, he's the son of God, I'm scot-free, is kind of weird to me.
Yeah, and you are like extremely brave. It's easy for us pretty much, especially now in the modern age, because Christians don't go around killing atheists. They even if they wanted to, they just can't. But you guys actually, when you're coming out, and if you're being extremely vocal about it, and we're going to talk about the picture that's behind you, especially if you're going to draw the face of Muhammad, which is a fucking death sentence, right?
Yeah.
And you this is what I like. And me and you are very similar because you give no fucks. Not only did you draw it, you recorded yourself drawing it, and you're hanging it up for everybody to see.
And I taught people how to draw.
Yeah. Go to her channel, guys. You can see that. It's one of her more recent videos. It's extremely brave. We don't have to face that going against Christianity, but it is a very real thing that you probably have to worry about. And it takes bravery to do what you did, and I commend you.
Well, I'll tell you what, when she tweeted out the other day about Blasphemy Day, and just to show you, what a coward I am, compared to Fay, I tweeted out, oh, I didn't know it was Blasphemy Day. I guess I'll have to get out my Virgin Mary dartboard, and I might even try my hand at drawing. And I just put ... I wasn't even able to let my fingers type the actual name, of what I was alluding to. Fay knew what I was alluding to, and then later that day, I am surprised to tune in to Fay's broadcast where she was doing her sketching and drawing tutorial on that very individual.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a group chat / thread going privately between me and the ex-Muslim squad, and Blasphemy Day was coming up, and I had met with one of my good friends, Ali Malik. If you don't follow him, please do. He's wonderful. But he was responsible for drawing up the list of people who were either killed, assassinated, imprisoned, or persecuted due to blasphemy laws. And I was sitting with him and he was telling me these stories, and he said, look, for Blasphemy Day, what we're all going to do is we're going to pick one and we're going to talk about them. And I sat there and I couldn't fathom what he was telling me. He was telling me about people who were, being hunted down through social media by texting things. And some of them are even illiterate, so we don't even know how they managed to text those things. Some of the statements that they said were not being released to the press, so no one even knows what they said. That it's just assumed that they blasphemed. They're being put in prison. A very famous case, Suhail Arabi, who I have all over my wall. He's been in prison for 7 years, on and off death row, going through torture. His mother has now been captured, forcibly separated from his family, from his wife. They actually made him get a divorce because they considered him an apostate. And he's been in prison for 7 years for criticizing the Prophet Muhammad on Facebook through an anonymous post that it was tracked back to him. We have cases like Mustafa Ali, who his mother wanted to send him off to ISIS, not so that he could join them, so that they could kill him because he's an apostate. We have Hamal in, I don't even know which country he's in now. I think he's in Sudan. Again, ex-Muslim atheist who's just there. I have my good friend, his Twitter handle is Sinning Kafir. He runs the Sinning Skeptics podcast. He's 19 years old, gay, atheist, can't say his name, can't show his face. And I'm hearing all these stories, and it's not enough. It's not enough to sit down and just talk about one case. I've spoken specifically about Sahel Arabi because I went to the first protest in London for it, and I felt justified in talking specifically about him. But all these other people, I don't know. And I would feel like I was doing everyone else a disservice if I was to just focus on one. So I sat down and I asked him, what do you think if I were to draw the Prophet Muhammad? And he immediately was like, you're going to get fucking killed. And then I went home and then I posted about it and I asked like my Twitter following, how dangerous do you think it is to draw the Prophet Muhammad? A lot of people talked about Charlie Hebdo, a lot of people talked about Denmark, a lot of people talked about a lot of things. And I asked one of my close friends, I had a long discussion with one of my friends who isn't involved in activism at all. And I said to her, I'm going to say something that I don't think I'm allowed to say. And she said, what? You say a lot of those things. What is it this time? And I said, I want to draw the Prophet Muhammad. And she said, you're going to fucking die. And every time someone said that to me, every single time, I remembered that people can't send text messages, can't show their faces online. And I was like, it just made me want to do it even more. I don't know if that sounds childish or not. And I honestly don't really care if it does. But every time someone said it, I felt as though I needed to do it even more because these people can't even stick a toe out of line, you know? And I'm sitting here in my privilege palace, you know, with all my shit everywhere. And I'm scared to do it. So I started the video and I started talking about this. I feel like I conveyed that pretty well in that video, everything that I just said. And then I said, if you accept this, I'm going to do this because I feel like normally for me, blasphemy isn't like a huge thing. I don't find much pleasure in it. But the reason why it's important to do is because people are dying for it. And I've had countless arguments with Muslims who have DM'd me, commented on my page. And honestly, I'm tired of the argument because it's always, why are you disrespecting people? It doesn't fucking matter if I'm disrespecting people because people are dying for disrespect.
Exactly.
And that's it. It's an irrelevant point. We can talk about identity politics and all that bullshit after people stop going to prison and stop dying because of this. And I keep hearing the argument, well, why don't you fight for Muslims? Because Muslims, at least to my knowledge, and even if they were, I would be fighting for that as well. To my knowledge, Muslims are not just being killed because they say they're Muslims, except in China right now, which is a horrendous thing that they're doing. I read that the other day. It just made me physically sick. But it is so ridiculous that you would value Muslim lives over atheist lives. And we as an atheist community are so shit at protecting our own. Like, we're so shit at doing these protests, raising money for these things, building awareness. Like the people who are currently trapped in Pakistani jails right now, if they are Christians, Christian organizations are reaching out to them and trying to get them out of prison. That the same thing happened with Asia Bibi. One of the major reasons why she managed to get out of that was because Christian missionaries were funding lawyers and things like that to get her out of prison. But we as atheists, as free thinkers, as skeptics, as, you know, progressive, enlightened people, we're so shit at protecting our own, and we need to get better at that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And even here, you know, our progressive left is just so scattered and fighting against each other that the unified front of the fucked up right can just pretty much do whatever the hell they want to do.
You know,
The thing is,
I'm sorry, you said when you were talking there about, I don't know if that makes me childish. It doesn't make you childish, Faye. It makes you brave and strong.
You're an inspiration, I think, and everything you said is true, and it's something that I know as a person that studies the world. I'm deep into politics. I understand what's going on in the world. A lot of people here in America just don't get it. They don't understand. Jill is trolling in the chat about how Christians had it so bad. Like, you don't understand what's going on right now.
And can I add to that? I don't know if you want to put it on the screen. He goes on to say in that very tweet that you guys are crying over nothing. Let me tell you something, you piece of shit motherfucker. Okay, here's the thing. You are one of the most horrible fucking people on the planet. You're misogynistic. You're bigoted. And you talk about nothing. Let me tell you something. A person responded to one of my tweets the other day when I was going at these Muslims that were going after ex-Muslims. And this person's called the communal atheist. And they have as their avatar on Twitter, and I couldn't see it because it was so small on my phone. And then I clicked on the full image. And what they have as their avatar, and it made me weep when I brought the picture up and looked at it. Their avatar is a snapshot, and I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sure, Marzia Ebrahimi. And she had acid thrown in her face simply because she would not wear a hijab. That is what these people are dealing with. So when you say that we're crying over nothing, fuck you.
Yeah, but I mean, Jill's just a troll, John. You don't let him get to you. I laugh at Jill.
So I wanted to say two things. So the first thing is to respond to this specifically. If you have empathy for what Christians used to go through, you should have the same level of empathy for everyone else who is going through the exact same fucking shit. I don't care who the fuck you are or how religious you think you are. If you do not have empathy for every single human life in the same vein as you have empathy for Christians who used to get fed to lions in Colosseums by Romans and whoever else the fuck, I don't know. If you have empathy for that, you should have empathy for other human beings as well. People are being butchered in other countries because they don't believe in anything. It's not even that they believe in something else, it's that they don't believe in anything. Okay? Maybe it could be argued from the other side, by the Romans, that the Christians were blaspheming against their gods. These people don't believe in anything. There is nothing to argue.
Yeah,
Goodbye, Jill.
Yeah.
And the other thing is,
Jill should have been banned. Go ahead.
The other thing is, in terms of the left, everybody is so fucking busy complaining about their pronouns and complaining about mansplaining and complaining about bullshit that does not matter, that they are literally throwing people under the bus. They are throwing women who have to wear hijabs in Iran and in Saudi Arabia and other Muslim countries. They are throwing them under the bus. They are throwing gays who are being thrown off buildings in, all these other countries under the bus. Women who are being stoned to death, people who are being killed for free thought. They are throwing them under the bus by complaining that their periods aren't being respected. Oh, I don't even know what the fuck. Okay, I saw on BuzzFeed, and that was probably my first mistake, that women were painting with their period blood. Do you understand that in the rest of the world, women are literally separated from society because they have their periods?
Yeah, it's just disgusting, and I've often been a proponent of that on a political nature. I hate it when Democrats side with Saudi Arabia over everybody else because of oil money. Republicans have completely sold their soul to Saudi Arabia. They overlook the atrocities. I mean, we could actually make a very big impact in these countries if we withheld U.S. money. But they choose not to. They choose to overlook these atrocities. And in my opinion, that makes us accessories to these crimes.
I mean, forget about everything they've done in the. I'm sorry, Faye. I think we got like a delay going on here. I apologize. You can talk about the many atrocities, by the Saudis over the years, but just recently, when they murdered that reporter, the idea that we did not cut ties with them right then and there just boggles my mind.
Well, I mean,
they executed a number of people this year and last year, and a few of them were progressive Muslim scholars. They were Muslim scholars that were progressive. There are 12 feminists who are being tortured in prison right now, Muslim feminists in Saudi prisons.
Yeah.
Like it is bizarre to me that we are sitting here in our ignorance. And I don't fashion myself as a very political person. I don't pay attention to the news. Most of my news comes from Twitter, and most of it is wrong. Okay, like I don't watch or watching CNN or watching, I don't know whatever, like I don't even know what the news outlets are anymore because I don't trust them.
Yeah.
And so I just find myself to it, and then someone tells me something and I don't understand what they're complaining about, why they're complaining.
Yeah, most people don't like you know, the famine in Yemen. It's completely led by the Saudis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thousands of children dying, starving to death, wasting away to nothing. Our weapons that we give them used in this war. Our Congress had a resolution to stop our aid until they stopped their war, and our president ignored it.
And all of these atrocities committed under the umbrella of the peaceful religion, quote, quote.
Well,
exactly.
It's under the umbrella of a man, particularly that posed as this great progressive future of Islam. Like we can't. You can go way back in my video log. I did a story on bin Salman and how he was going to be this progressive hope for Saudi Arabia, and then he started killing people.
This idea that there's going to be a progressive hope is just a fantasy.
Yeah.
It is not a realistic thing to expect of Saudi Arabia. No one is ignorant of the things that Saudi Arabia does. Saudi Arabia is a corrupt nation, and we're all acting as though it's fine.
Yeah.
Like they stone people to death. They behead people. They cut off people's hands. Okay? Like it's...
Throw them off of roofs. How many stories have I read?
I don't know if they do that, but I also wouldn't be surprised. Like they lash people in public for drinking. They can't. People have to smuggle in alcohol, and the alcohol they smuggle in is absinthe. It's called cider. Like it's absinthe. And for people who have no tolerance of alcohol, it's literally a death sentence. Like people are dying to drink.
Yeah,
that is how fucking ridiculous Saudi is. But somehow we're just going to ignore the fact that that's a problem. And instead we're going to sit over here and complain about, I don't know, people's different bathrooms. I don't know.
Yeah. Whether or not some people should be allowed in a bathroom or not is what they're literally worried about.
Make a gender-neutral bathroom. I feel like everybody knows that people have vaginas and penises. Just make an everybody bathroom.
Yeah.
Make a kid's bathroom and an adult's bathroom. Easy.
Yeah, I think that's
problem solved.
Problem solved.
Hey, I just want to do a shout out to Tony Designs in the live chat. He's a really on the ball mod for this channel. He's been posting Fay's the link to Fay's YouTube channel
thank you
throughout the and he posting the episode that I'm having on my channel later. So thanks, Tony.
Yeah, Tony is a miracle. Like seriously, if you didn't believe in miracles before, meet Tony Designs. But this is the absolute conversation I wanted to have. Because last week, with Cara and I want to have very respectful conversations where I'm learning and learning and learning. But at the same time, I wanted to have a conversation where we could talk about these atrocities because people need to know
about Islam. If you want to talk about just Islam, I can put my fundamentalist cap on and we can talk about Islam. I'm more than happy to do that. I've done that with Muslims who've had doubts with Islam. And they're like, look, I don't want you to take my faith away. And I'm like, I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to share my experience. And if you want to know something about Islam that you feel uncomfortable asking an actual Muslim, I'm more than happy to give you that information. But and there's like over 6 hours of content of me online on a different show, just reciting Arabic with no context. Just me reciting the Quran. I am more than happy to sit down and talk about Islam if that's what you want to do.
Well, I have I'll go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I think that it's really, really important to highlight that just because I have an appreciation for what I used to believe, that does not mean that I can't tear it to fucking fill because
So,
it's literal garbage.
so here's a question I have for you then with your former Muslim cap on.
Yeah.
A few months back, I had Topic Thunder on, Misha Griffith, and a few others that I can't remember. And we talked about female subservience in religion, and most specifically, we talked a lot about female genital mutilation. What the practice of female genital mutilation, of course, is not practiced by all of Islam, but those that do practice it, what are they basing their right to do that on? Like, what are there certain passages in the Quran that they are misinterpreting? What is it that they base that they feel they have the right to do that on?
Okay, so in Islam we have two main sects, Shias and Sunnis. Shias, as far as I know, they don't do that. But Sunnis are divided on 4 different schools of thought: Hanafis, Shafi'is, Malikis, and Hanbalis. Now, Hanafis, they're like the most chill of the Sunnis because their rules are very, very. I don't want to say lenient because I don't want to detract from the fact that Islam is a crazy fucking religion, but they're the most lenient of a crazy religion. And then you have the other 3 schools of thought, and those 3 schools of thought are mainly in and around the Middle East, Northern Africa. Hanafis are very, very broad. They go across Asia and like the islands, the Pacific Islands and stuff like that, and the Muslims there. But the rest of the Muslim world follow one of these 3 schools of thought. Now, where these 3 schools get their evidence from is from the narrations of the Prophet, which recommend female genital mutilation. Now, there are 2 main sources in Islam. The first is, well, there are 4, but let's not complicate things, even though this is already too complicated for me to explain. The main one is the Quran, which all Muslims agree on. And the second one is the teachings of the Prophet, which are recorded in 6 different authentic books. Now, there have been many, many disagreements over the teachings of the Prophet because they were recorded about 200 to 400 years after his death, but they are still held sacred by most Sunni Muslims. So the evidence for female genital mutilation is there in the authentic sources of what the Prophet taught, but the disagreement comes between the schools of thought. I don't know if that made any sense.
Well,
it did for
I'm
me,
sorry.
but I understand Islam a little better than probably most laymen.
I mean, do you remember or know off the top of your head, like, is there certain, and I forget what they're called, they're not called verses in the, yeah, I mean, is there certain things that are said in the Quran that they believe tells them that they should do that?
Female genital mutilation isn't mentioned in the Quran.
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, so that's the thing, John, that maybe you don't understand is that the Quran is the book, but isn't it like everything Muhammad said throughout his life? It wasn't recorded at the time, but passed down word of mouth basically until they recorded it. The Hadith. It's pretty much the things he would say.
The way that so one of to give an example, one of the most authentic hadith books is Al-Bukhari, and it's named after the man who collected all these hadiths. And the way that he would do it is, it's considered a science in Islam, is that he would find someone who said something that came from the Prophet, and he would find out who said that to him, and who said that to him, and who said that to him, which is what is called the chain of narrators. And the stronger the chain is, so it all depends on the history of the person who's saying it. So if that person is known as a liar, that makes the hadith or the narration weaker. So there's a gradation. You have Sahih, which is authentic. You have Hasan, which is good. You have Da'if, which is weak. And there are other gradations as well. There are corrupted, or I've forgotten what they're called, fabricated hadith, which are not regarded as part of religion at all. But they were collected anyway. But Bukhari what he did was that he collected only authentic narrations in his book. He doesn't have any Hasan, any Da'if hadiths in his book. They are all Sahih, they are all authentic, they are all considered to be from the Prophet, which is why people accept them as, authentic. But when you bring them to modern day Muslims, they will always say, oh, well, that might be weak. And that irks me, because it shows me how ignorant they are about their religion. That if this is a Sahih narration from this book, that means it's authentic. There is no disputing it, because it's considered authentic by all the muftis and all the scholars and the ijma and everyone. So who are you to say that this isn't?
Yeah, and it's the thing that's vitally different from Christianity, to where Christians, Jesus didn't exist. Muhammad did, and he had a whole life, and they went through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Well, there are new theories coming about that Muhammad may have not existed, because
Really?
I'm not sure
Wow.
if you're aware of Armin Navabi.
I am, because of you.
Okay, well, he was in London in August, and I had the pleasure of showing him around British Library.
Doesn't
British
he know
Museum.
Sam Harris? Like, isn't he in that crowd? That name sounds really familiar to me.
Atheist Republic.
Yeah.
He's one
All
of
right,
the
yeah.
founders of Atheist Republic.
Right,
yeah,
I know who you're talking about. Definitely.
I had the pleasure of showing him around some museums here in London, and in the British Library, we have some of the oldest Qur'ans in existence. And he really wanted to see, he wanted to see the Magna Carta, but he also wanted to see these Qur'ans, because I told him about them, and then he got obsessed immediately. So we went to see these Qur'ans, and actually, some of these Qur'ans are dated before the birth of Muhammad. So there are new theories about the existence of Muhammad, and we don't actually know if he existed. Additionally, to support that claim, many mosques are not facing Saudi Arabia. Many of them are facing Petra, which shows an inconsistency.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. That's very interesting.
You say he was in.
Look at.
You said he was in London in August. Was that for the atheists meet or agnostic? What was the name of that event?
There was an event that was set up by two ex-Muslims they are a married couple. They're very close friends of mine. By Mimsy and Walid, they had set up Atheists Assemble.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I was on the door, so I met everyone that walked in, which was great.
Yeah, because as a matter of fact, because of that Atheist Assemble, that was how I was introduced to you online through Topic Thunder and a couple other people.
Yeah, I love what you do. Like you are active. I think that's why I find so many similarities between us. Is we have a lot of the same thoughts, and we're not afraid to just go at it. To just put it out there. This is the truth. Face it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but this is the fucking truth.
Yeah. And I think that there's very little you can go wrong with when you're just, being honest. And I think that's where, because I also made a video, and this did me a disservice, but I don't regret making the video. I did a video teaching people how to lie properly because it's something that you have to learn as someone who's hiding who you actually are. A lot of the people that I interact with, they're closeted. They're in countries where it's dangerous for them to be themselves, or they're in families that is dangerous for them to be themselves. And I put a bunch of disclaimers in the beginning, but I did teach them how to lie, because I feel like that's an important skill to have while you're doing that. And it did me so much disservice to make that video, but I don't regret it in the slightest, because the amount of comments I got saying, I wish I knew this when I was younger, was just overwhelming.
Well, and you are leading me into a question that I've been thinking about for a while to try and work in and ask you. So here in this country, theists sometimes like to speculate on how many Christians are actually secret atheists, but they don't want to come out because of the backlash, which of course in the backlash that they would be subject to is nothing compared to the backlash that, ex-Muslims can suffer. But if you had to guess, what percentage of people in Islam would you think that are atheists or are apostates that simply have not shared that with anybody because they are fearful of the backlash they might receive?
I think in the West it's probably a higher percentage than in the East. I think that here, for example, in London, if we say we have, I don't know how many Muslims are in, I'm not even going to try to guess how many Muslims there are in London. But if we say, I would say that it's about 50-50, honestly, because
wow.
I don't understand how you can be presented with secular ideas and secular values unless you're completely ignorant of your religion. I don't know how you can be given secular values and be brought up in a society with secular values and not be inclined to agree with them, you know. In the East, I think it's a different question. For me, for example, if I was a sociopath, I would have left Islam, because not science, secularism, morality, history, none of it fucking mattered to me. All that mattered to me was that I cared about people. And this is why I think that it's so strange that people don't really value the emotional argument. I feel like I'm undermined because I have an emotional argument. But people from my strain of Islam do not give a fuck if the earth is flat or round. Like, they don't care, because the book says it, so the book is right. That is it. So I feel as though I have to work from an emotional argument, because as far as I'm aware, I'm the only person who's publicly left fundamentalism. Except for a couple of people who are like from the States. Like our community is, well, my sub community, it can't really be called a community, there's so few of us, but like people who speak from an emotional argument are undermined simply because we value that fact, because religion for us was not something, it wasn't a chore. Religion for us was something so linked to what we loved and what we did and what we believed in, rather than something that we tried to prove. You know, we didn't need the proof to begin with. So I think in the East, it really varies from person to person. If you're from a sect that, you know, for example, Ahmadis, who I consider to be Muslims, who are Muslims because they identify as Muslims and should not be persecuted in the slightest. Ahmadis have a very interesting way of reinterpreting Islam. They reinterpret it in a very, very scientific way. And if you value science and you're an Ahmadi, I don't see why you would find that conflicting. If you value source material and you understand what contradictions are, you might want to leave. But I mean, if you value science, that's not going to be a problem. Whereas if you're a fundamentalist and you value science, yeah, you're going to have a lot of inconsistencies because none of it makes sense. So I think it really, really depends. But in the West, I would say it's over half or half, because I don't know how you can be exposed to secular values and still think that they're a bad idea.
Yeah, it's almost like they're in denial. Like I had a series of videos just kind of poking fun at Christians. Like do you really believe in Jesus? Because I mean, you say you do, but you don't. You know, you live in secular society, and everything about it pretty much goes against what the religion tells you to do. So you just say it. You know, and I think it's just a lot of Christians are actually atheists. They just are afraid to admit it to themselves. But that's just my wild cuckoo conspiracy theory.
Well, I mean, when I was a fundamentalist, I considered every other type of Muslim not a Muslim because they weren't a fundamentalist. So take that for what you will. I'm not like that anymore. I like to just allow people to identify themselves, and then I just go from there. But it still pops in my head, like if someone says that I'm a Quranist, I don't believe that that Muhammad narrated all these hadith. My argument is just going to be, well, you're not the majority, so what's your point? Like, well, my argument is that in an Islamic state, if someone set up an Islamic state, you would be killed way quicker than I would be killed, because you're a blasphemer and I'm a disbeliever. Like, I would be given 3 days. You wouldn't be given 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's crazy to hear. Like, you know, here in America, it's just hard to imagine that life. You know, it's just, I think it's really hard to imagine that life, and to hear it from a person that knows it and has seen it, and knows what's going on. these are the conversations we need to be having more of. And like I said, I shy away from them because of Islamophobe, and I try to be extremely fair. Even more, I've been trying to be more fair with Christians, just actively trying to be more fair with them.
Yeah.
But we need to have these hard conversations, and we don't need to run away from them. We don't need to be afraid of the labels they're going to throw at us for talking the truth. And that's what I absolutely love about you, is you're not afraid to speak truth to power. Damn the consequences. It makes us very similar.
When I first started, I don't want to say being an activist, but when I first started talking about Islam, something that I used to do is I used to tweet at all my favorite skeptics. So The Amazing Atheist was one, Jacqueline Glenn was one. There were a couple of others that I've forgotten about because I just can't, I don't have time anymore. But I used to tweet at them and ask them to talk about different parts of Islam, and I just never used to see it. And I always thought, like, the skeptic community is only skeptical about Christianity. Like, I wish they would talk more about what I went through, and it just seemed, and they did. It's not like they never addressed Islam, but it was always in like small increments as compared to like how much they would talk about the Westboro Baptist Church, which again is like a minority, or Mormons, or the other crazy nut jobs. I don't know. But like they would talk about Christianity in a way which I wished they talked about the majority of Islam. Like it's the majority. It's not even like fringe groups who are just going around doing vigilante things. It's whole countries and nations putting in place laws that end people's entire lives.
Yeah, human beings that, because they make a choice to love somebody, are being put to death right now. Because they choose to speak out against Muhammad, they're being put to death right now. And that's something that we should be screaming at the top of our lungs as a community. And as I said, as I freely admitted, we run away from it. It's something that we need to stop doing. And I'm going to, like, I'm fully committed to really knowing what I'm speaking of. So, I really like to understand, one of the main reasons I don't go at Islam like I go at Christianity is because I know Christianity and I want to understand fully what I'm talking about. So, but it's something that we should be taking the time to learn, and we should be screaming at the top of our lungs that these atrocities need to stop.
Well, when people bring me onto their shows and they want me to mix it up a little bit. They don't just want me to cry on camera, which is a particular talent of mine. But when they bring me onto their shows, they want me to address other things like veganism, and they want me to address things like feminism and global warming and all that stuff. And all of that stuff is important. I'm not saying that it's not important, but there are countries in this world where you cannot think the way that you want to think. I feel like that takes precedence with global warming. I feel like global warming is also something that we don't talk about, and it needs to be spoken about. But there are people in countries that cannot think, and you want to talk about luxury taxes? Can we please solve this problem first? Can we stop killing people because they don't believe in anything? And then we can talk about tampons.
Yeah, and it would be easy if the people of the Western nations that are really providing funds to these nations demanded these human rights violations be addressed, or we withdraw those funds. I guarantee you, we would see a huge change in the region.
Well, and I just want to say to people who are watching this now or in the future that are of a certain age like me, any of the old farts out there is what I'm trying to say. Any of you folks that talk about, well, today's youth, darn it, they're not engaged. I mean, just so you know, Fay here is in her early 20s, and the ideas that she has, the things that she does, I think it speaks to a wisdom far beyond her years. So, if people who think that today's youth, don't know nothing about nothing and aren't out there engaging in the world, well, here's an example of why you're wrong with that.
to be fair, I don't know nothing about I don't know anything. All I know is what I know.
Mhm.
And I know that I'm an idiot. Like, I know that I don't know politics. I know that I don't know anything about Christianity or Hinduism. I feel like I don't need to know anything about them, which may be an ignorant thing to say, but I genuinely don't, because they're wishy-washy religions. One of them is a bunch of fairies and the other one has a sun. So it's irrelevant to me. I don't need to know it. I came from a religion where there was one God and that made sense to me. And now the rest of it just is bullshit. Like, I don't need to know it. And to be fair, like, yes, I behave ignorantly as well, because I feel like that speaks to my age and I feel like I should channel that. I should be allowed to be like that. But 1984, George Orwell, right? That's like one of my favorite stories of all time, but I never thought that it was a real thing. And it is a real thing. In Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in 13 and more, if you consider the mob, different Muslim countries. It is a real thing. Pakistan has the FIA, which literally hunts people through the internet to see if they're blaspheming, so they can charge them. It is literally Big Brother watching you all the time, making sure that you don't step a toe out of line. Otherwise, you are fucking dead.
Sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that we need to continue talking about, because these countries, they are the theocracies that a lot of fundamental Christians want to have here in America. And
yeah, and I don't get that.
Why
would you want to fuck up a good thing? You guys can say anything you want.
They want to literally go back into where we can't. I cover the crazy fuckers all the time, but even among mainstream Christianity, they are considered crazy. They're friends. They're off the wall. This is dominant, like you said, even in the moderate communities of the Islamic faith. They have these very extreme ideals, and it needs to be addressed. They have real theocracies to where these religions are directly impacting people's lives and their ability to live. And as you said, think. I mean, can't even fucking imagine not being able to think correct.
I was just trying to, because I'm pretty good at putting myself in other people's shoes, and I was just trying to understand the mentality of someone who literally can't think for themselves. Like, they just can't. And I couldn't fathom it. I still can't fathom it. Like, I would have killed myself so early on if that was my reality. And I don't know how people live like that.
I couldn't imagine.
Hello to Allie in the chat, and I'm amazed to see you. This is being up at the crack of dawn for you.
Yeah, she's up early today.
Yeah.
What's up, Allie? Great conversation. I'm willing to let it go as long as you want. If you have anything else to talk, there's a lot to it, so I can't wait to have more of these conversations. And I want to invite you, like, anytime that you're free, and if you ever want to jump into a room and really go at the topic, we can do it that way. We can do it just like we did right now, just one-on-one. I love these conversations, and I want to learn more. And just great information, great information. Yeah. I think.
I mean, is there anyone in the chat that has a question?
If you have any questions for Faye, tag Nakasuchi or a raging atheist in the chat.
I haven't been paying much attention to it today.
Or better yet, super chat a question.
Donate to my October thing. Don't know why I'm sober this month. I'm a good person.
Now, Tony's been linking your YouTube channel in the chat. Is what you just said your October? What is it again?
I'm going sober for October to support Macmillan Cancer because I am a good human being.
Is there something about that? Is there something about that on your YouTube channel where they can find the link?
I didn't do a specific video about that, but like I don't hide the fact that my mother died of cancer, so that's why I do it every year. So it's something that I do every single year, and I have chosen the worst month to be sober. Like, I used to fast in Ramadan every single fucking year, and this is more difficult. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, Halloween. Halloween's like my favorite holiday. It's supposed to be a kid's holiday, but not here. It's an adult holiday.
It's
No,
pretty fun.
speaking of
I
the
gotta be drinking on Halloween.
oh, and speaking of
Well,
the horrible people that go after Faye a lot on Twitter and other ex-Muslims, she just spoke of the loss of her mother. There was actually an asshole on Twitter that was going at
saw
her
that.
and disrespecting her dead mother when she
yeah.
tweeted about that. Like,
Yeah, I can't control myself when people do that, because even though, like, me and my mother didn't have a very close relationship, but it's, come on, man. She's dead and she's my mom. Like, I feel like that, first of all, it's my mom. Like, and second of all, she's dead. So I don't understand. And the thing was, it was a post just about my mother and why I'm raising money. And he had decided to make it all about Islam and how alcohol causes cancer. And like, initially I was like, okay, I'm just going to ignore this. And then later down in the conversation, because he was talking to one of my good friends, later in the conversation, he said how most instances of cancer is preventable. And that just like, cancer happens to fucking everybody. Cancer gives no fucks. Like, it gets kids, it gets old people, it gets unhealthy people, it gets healthy people. Yes, people who smoke are more likely, people who drink are more likely, but it gives no fucks. Like, I could not believe that he would assert that cancer could be preventable.
did you see that question in the chat there, Knock?
Yeah. So last week I had a Kara on, who is an active Muslim, and she was quite liberal about the fact that her interpretation of the things she was saying would be very, very controversial in the Muslim community. But she, and you slightly answered this earlier, but Ali wasn't here. She says, what does Faye think about the claims made by our other Muslim guests regarding LGBTQ rights being justified in the text of the Quran? I think it was the Quran, maybe a little bit of the Hadith as well.
Okay.
And you probably didn't see that stream, but she was basically saying that people are interpreting it wrong, and that it is acceptable by the text.
Okay, so when people bring me this argument, it makes me very confused. First of all, you're a fringe group, and not most Muslims believe that. Most Muslims believe that homosexuals need to be punished because they're degenerates. And that's them saying that. That's not me saying that. I know someone's going to take that out of context, but who gives a fuck? The first thing is, in the Quran, we have the story of Lot and his people. His people were gay, and they were destroyed by an angel.
Yeah, she spoke of that story specifically.
He smote them in the ground, and I've heard the argument that it's not to do with homosexuality, it's to do with rape, but Lot had offered his daughters to his people, and to actually like fuck and rape his daughters, and they refused to do it. Like, first of all, that tells you what kind of person Lot is, priorities. And second of all, his people were gay. There is no disputing that. Second of all, in the Hadith, there are narrations on how to punish someone who is gay. And there are two different opinions from most Sunni scholars. One of them is throwing them from the tallest building in the city, or tallest mountain, or tallest height, because of the way that the people of Lot were smoked. So the people of Lot, the way that they were destroyed was that an angel picked them up on his wing and smash them into the ground. So they take that interpretation and say that gay people should be flung from rooftops because that is the story of the people of Lot. The other punishment, because it's similar to like adultery and fornication, is the stoning to death of gays. Because in Islam, if you commit adultery and there are 4 witnesses or whatever the fuck, the stupid, ridiculous rule, if they commit adultery and they are caught committing adultery, both the man and the woman are stoned to death. And that is also applied to gay people. It exists in the Sharia. It exists in Muslim countries. It exists in the text, no matter how you want to spin it. And if you spin it in a way that it does not match up with the majority, you are still a fringe and no one is buying your idea.
Well, and I just want to point out too that when you at the beginning of what you said, where you said, "Yeah, that's going to be taken out of context," just so you know, like somebody like Matt Powell, who goes after Knock here, he would absolutely take that statement of yours and cut the part out where you said that. When you were explaining what fundamentalists think about homosexuals, he would cut that part out and put that in as your quote, that you were bashing LGBTQ, and there's so many dishonest folks out there that do that quote mining,
Look, I'm protected because I'm a gay person. I can say whatever the fuck I want. So it's fine. It's already been done. I've been arguing about it for 2 days. Sorry, it feels like 2 years, but it's been 2 days. People frequently do it. I don't care. I go off my own merit. If people want to believe what someone else says, that's believe what you want to believe. That is my whole thing.
Yeah,
so
she put a big emphasis on interpretation, and Ashley's Ali saying,
it's a very new idea.
Yeah. Kara's claim was that the story was misinterpreted because of the intent behind the rape, basically mental sin, and yeah, it is like and I'm very patient. I'm going to be very respectful of my guests, and I love that a Muslim thinks that, or maybe few Muslims think that. Well, but the truth is that most don't.
It is certainly a good idea. I don't disagree with it, and we actually support LGBT Muslims who think in this way. But the biggest backer of the opinion that I just told you, that it is wrong to be homosexual in Islam, is the fact that the Bible has the same story, and the story is about gays. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's really difficult to then be like, oh, well, Islam has a different no other story has that much of a difference. A biblical story that exists in the Quran has that much of a difference from what the Bible says.
Yeah, and Christians use that same story for the same reason. Matt Powell is one of them. So, I mean, yeah, that is one of the stories that is discussed and is used to really other human beings and to make them seem as less than and to give yourself justification for harming them, either emotionally or physically. It's the reason that I'm staunchly against Abrahamics as a whole, because I think that this is ingrained in Abrahamics, this otherism. You don't believe in our one God, so the rest of you can just go to hell.
There's another question for Faye in the live chat there, Knock, from Warlord Piskin.
All right, I have a question for Faye. Let's put it up. Do you know about the Muslim religious event happening in Iraq, Iran this week? There's a big pilgrim thing going, and the CIA tried to stop it with a revolution.
I didn't know that the CIA could induce a revolution, first of all. And can they do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard that myself.
So the holy site.
I went past them.
So the holy site in Iran, it's called Karbala, and it's a Shia Muslim thing, so it's the minority anyway. It's not the majority. And what they do is they commemorate the death of the Prophet's grandson who died in that place. And the way they do that is they beat themselves up. I don't know. I've never really understood Shias. They're not my people. I'm gonna get in shit for that. Zara's gonna come at me and be like, "What do you mean we're not your people?" But the Shias they venerate that day because the Prophet's grandson died on that day, and he died quite horrifically as well. And they punish themselves to remember the pain that he experienced or something. It's a pretty harmless event if you consider that there's self-harm involved. If you ignore that part, it's a pretty harmless event.
Yeah, it sounds like some of the more severe sects of Catholics that harm themselves to feel the pain of Jesus.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's the only crazy thing that Shias do. They're not crazy in any other way.
No. Yeah, I think she is.
So, I mean,
I'm more familiar with Sunnis myself. I've studied just not a lot of information, at least so far, that I've had on the Shias. All right, I think that was the last question, maybe.
That was the
The
last
last-
one that I've seen so far. Yeah.
Well, just a great discussion, Faye. I'd love having you on. I definitely want to get you back on as much as I can. I think people are like clawing to get you on their channel now. So,
They are. It's really. I have to have a calendar now. I never used to need that. I feel like.
but that's
Um,
good. Like I said, we need to be talking about this shit, man. We got to be talking about this shit.
Yeah, we do, and I'm surprised that I think for a long time recently there has been more ex-Muslim content on like mainstream skeptic channels, like with GM Skeptic and with not Aaron Ra, the one that looks like him, the young one, Rationality Rules.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
that's funny.
there
Yeah, I never
there have
thought of
been
Looks like
that.
R and
yeah.
Raw.
A young version of R and Raw. Yeah, I can see it.
Um, But yeah, recently, like in the last month, because Armin came here and because we had a big meetup where all of the ex-Muslims were just in one place. I'm so surprised nothing happened, by the way. But we were all in one place, and I feel as though the skeptic community kind of opened up to us and started propagating a little bit to what we've been trying to talk about for ages. Like veterans like Mariam Namazi, Geeta Sagal, they've been talking about these things for years, like plus 10 years now, and it's only just being highlighted. The work that Mariam Namazi has done, like she should have a fucking Nobel Peace Prize. Taking people out of countries, fighting for refugees who are fleeing their countries because of apostasy laws and blasphemy laws. Like I don't know how that woman isn't more acclaimed and more recognized. And also, when you meet her, she's like one of the most down to earth people you'll ever meet.
I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody's saying that Ashley asked another question that we missed, and
Yeah, I was gonna get to it. I'm gonna look into her because I think I know exactly who you're talking about, and I think I've been considering doing a video, kind of just talking about her work. But the name, I get that the names are hard for me to keep track of. But I think I know exactly who you're talking about, and I've been considering doing work for her.
There's two women in particular. That one is Ayan Hirsi Ali, who's I feel as though is the oldest one. Maybe besides Salman Rushdie, but he wrote a couple of books, which this changed the game. And then there's Mariam Namazi, who is based here in the UK. And there are a couple of others as well who I don't know off the top of my head because I'm terrible with names, but I feel as though their work needs to be highlighted and they're not given the acclaim that they need to be given because they're considered to be controversial when they really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I have that question here in front of me if you want me to read it.
Go ahead, read it, John.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You found, Faye asks from the prior interview, have you observed young Earth creationists among Muslims or even old Earth creationists? There was some contention over the answer given to that question as well.
What do those terms mean?
Well, young Earth creationists believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, and that dinosaurs walked among men, and they take that the biggest reason why they believe that is they take, and I believe it's in the Book of Chronicles where it talks about all the begats. They count backwards the generations, and that's where they get the 6,000 years old of the Earth from. And then old Earth creationists are Christians who accept evolution and believe that that the universe is billions of years old and like that.
Okay. Well, most Muslims don't accept evolution as they still consider it a theory, which I'm not going to have that discussion here. But most Muslims don't believe in evolution. The Quran and, as far as I'm aware, the Hadith don't put a number on the age of the Earth, but Muhammad is considered to be descended directly from Abraham. I don't know if that answers the question in any way, but there's no number on the earth. Muhammad wasn't very good with numbers. Anytime numbers are mentioned in the Quran, you always have to kind of think of how to twist that because he wasn't very good at numbers and he doesn't give a number for the age of the earth, as far as I'm aware.
So it's just not even really an issue at all. It's not something that you just even think about.
No, because we're always told like questions like that aren't really important to faith. Like it's not gonna change your faith if the Earth is 6,000 years old or 6 billion years old. Like it's not something that really affects belief, so it's not important.
Well, and to be fair, like I said, it's not mentioned in the Bible that, hey, the universe is X number of years old, and these people take other parts of the Bible and it's their interpretation.
Yeah, there's a.
As far as I'm aware, I don't
in the
think
Bible.
anyone's had. I don't think any Muslim has had the time to sit around and figure out how old the Earth is, which is what I feel as though a Christian did. Which, I mean, props to him. Research is research, I guess. But it was just never viewed, numbers particularly, unless it's a part of faith. Like ages and things like that, they're not really mentioned unless it's to do with Muhammad, because he's the only like important guy. But like numbers in general, not really that much of an important thing when it doesn't come to faith. So like number of prayers, yes. Number of times you wash something, yes. But in terms of like the age of the Earth, the age of prophets, and the time periods of things, those kind of things aren't really mentioned.
Yeah, that's interesting. I almost envy you not having to argue with young Earth creationists.
But it's a dumb conversation to have. I feel as though.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
I mean, but in Islam we do have a geocentric solar system. From the way that the Quran describes the solar system, it appears as though it's a geocentric solar system.
See, that's interesting. That
but I don't think many Muslims think that.
I believe that's part of young Earth creationism. I believe they don't accept heliocentric model as well.
Yeah, most Muslims don't. If you tell them that, they'll be like, no, that's just bullshit. The Quran doesn't say that. Most Muslims don't believe in a geocentric solar system. But if you go to different scholars and muftis and really old, crazy people, if we're being real, they're old, crazy people. Some of them will say that the sun goes around the Earth, because that's how the Quran describes it. It doesn't explicitly state it, but it does describe it like that.
Well, and that makes sense because, back in that day when the Quran was written, people looked up in the sky, and as far as they knew, the sun was revolving around the Earth, but of course we now know that is not true.
Yeah, that's, it's crazy, because we have flat earthers and just how people can just ignore science and just, the sun is in orbit around the Earth. Like, no, like we know, but I mean, it's still kind of pale in comparison to some of the things that the young Earth creationists think. But that is interesting. Like it's hard to even really conceive of the notion that the sun revolves around us and not the other way around.
I think it's difficult. Weird. I think it's difficult for us because we know that it doesn't.
Yeah, we know that it doesn't. So do you guys have flat Earth? Like, does Islam have flat earthers? Do you believe that
okay, so we have a very famous televangelist. You guys have probably heard of him. His name is Zakir Naik, and he likes to consolidate science with the Quran. We were watching him yesterday. It was a very PTSD experience. But he has made this understanding of Islam, because when you read the Quran, it presents the Earth in a very geocentric way, and it presents the Earth also in a flat way. But when he talks about it like everything in the Quran is purely scientific. Which, and if I'm to be fair, the Quran is written in a really vague way. That's the only way it gets away with that. So, like, there's a verse that says that the Earth, we made the Earth an expanse, and the word for expanse is rooted in the word carpet. And when William Campbell, who debated Zakir Naik, when he brought that point up, Zakir Naik said something like, a carpet can be flat or it can be wrapped around something. Like, it's so vague that you can do that.
Wow.
But
Yeah, I
when
know that
someone says,
Chad is
when God
having fun with
says we made the earth an expanse, and the word used is related to the word carpet, the picture you get in mind is not a football. It's flat.
Yeah, and he says that our carpet can, or something can be wrapped in a carpet. I mean, the only thing I've ever seen wrapped in carpets is like in movies like Goodfellas. They wrap bodies in carpets to dispose of them. Like,
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think that that's the point that he was trying to make. And the other one is that I think William Campbell also pointed out that in part of the Quran it says that the earth is like a disc. And Zakir Naik changed that to be like, well, a disc is also round. But it's flat. That's the point he was trying to make, and he just avoided it. But yeah, because the Quran is so vague, it's sometimes difficult to point out the inconsistency. There's one verse where it's about a character in the Quran called Dhul Qarnayn, who scholars still disagree on who he is in history. For a long time, it was Alexander the Great. Now they've moved on to Cyrus the Great. I'm not sure. The name in Arabic just means a man. Dhul Qarnayn means two-horned. So he was a guy who fashioned himself with two horns on his helmet or whatever. And there's a verse that says that he went to a place where the sun sets in a murky spring, which was consistent with Arab folklore at the time. And the place that he went to, the people that he found there, their faces were blackened by the heat of the sun. So that's the biggest scientific discrepancy in the Quran, because the Quran is claiming that a man went to the place where the sun sets.
hey,
Well,
And the
yeah.
sun doesn't set.
allow me to. I'm sure you just saw that knock, but I also screenshot one from earlier when you were out of the room. So now it'd probably be a good time, since this one here is from as a question for Fay. $5 from Sydney V. What does Fay and panel think about the great pic of ex-Muslims at the Holocaust Memorial and the related outrage?
Okay, so I actually have I've responded to it in a series of tweets. I didn't think it needed a video. But when I saw it initially, I just felt jealous because I wasn't there with them. They were in Berlin. And we didn't get to go to Berlin. It was just those four, and I was like super jealous that I didn't get to go. Somebody sent me the picture. Somebody DM'd me the picture, because I don't follow everything on Twitter. I just follow garbage. So someone DM'd me and they insisted that I tell Armin, which is a ridiculous notion in and of itself, because Armin would not listen to me. But they had insisted that I tell Armin to take the picture down. And I didn't have any context. I didn't know what the place was. I didn't know what the picture or why she wanted me to take it down. She just said, tell him to take it down. So I go to the picture. I feel super jealous, and I was going to write a comment like, where am I? And then I see all the comments and people being outraged by it. And I had to do a little bit of soul searching, because initially I was not offended by it at all, except for the fact that I wasn't in it, and that was the only thing that offended me. But now I was seeing all these people who are outraged by it, and now somehow my perspective had completely shifted. And then I had to I talked to Mimsy, who was in the photo, and she told me why they took that photo, and why they decided to post it. But she really wanted to take it down because of the backlash, not necessarily because it was wrong to take. And I had to think about it, and a lot of people were making very valid arguments by saying that this is a Holocaust memorial, it's not meant to be stood on, this should be respected, whatever. But I posited a notion that, pyramids, and a lot of people were like, pyramids weren't built by slaves. Look, we're talking about Jews. Jews were slaves. Jews built the pyramids. Okay, that is the premise that I'm taking. I'm not trying to, continuously tell people a myth. I'm just going off what I know of, the Bible, and how the Canaanites were treated by the pharaohs. And if we accept that premise, that is what you believe, then slaves built the pyramids. I'm sorry. Okay. But I said that. I said that slaves built the pyramids, but people are fine to take pictures with the pyramids. You know, Christians were sacrificed in colosseums. People take pictures with colosseums. So what is so wrong with ex-Muslims taking a picture with the Holocaust memorial? And I just asked a question. I didn't assert anything. All I said was, what is an appropriate picture to take with the Holocaust memorial? And I got a plethora of answers. Some people said, you're not allowed to take any pictures of it. Okay, no one would know about the Holocaust memorial. Some people said, you can take a selfie and you can be happy around it, but you shouldn't be standing on it. Why? Because it represents graves. Okay, but people stand on graves all the time. Churches are built on graves. You know, the whole fucking earth is a graveyard. Let's be real. The other person that I spoke to said that we're just narcissistic. And I said that he should shut the fuck up because his profile picture was him standing in front of something. Like, how do you claim that we're narcissistic? And the whole point of the photo was to resonate with the fact that we are also religiously persecuted in the same way that the Jews of Nazi Germany were religiously persecuted. People are being killed for their ideas in other countries in the same way that Jews were persecuted in Nazi Germany. That was the point of the photo. And the only thing that I could find, and a lot of people said, oh, well, it's not your monument to reinterpret or whatever. I said it's an art piece and people can reinterpret it however the fuck they want, okay? Like, it's not for you to tell me how I view art. I feel like that's stupid. We'd get nowhere anywhere anyhow. But there was one person who said, maybe you should have clarified the caption because we didn't really know what it was meant to be. And that is the only thing that I could find that I agree on. So my opinion on that photo is that I don't think that it was wrong to take. Nothing is sacred to me. You know, at the end of the day, it is an art piece. There are pictures of the Berlin Memorial, the Holocaust Memorial, with people running on it and standing on it. And it's posted by Berlin. You know, there is nothing wrong with standing on it. There are no signs saying that you can't stand on it. Taking the picture and posting it was not wrong. Second of all, the intention of the picture was not wrong. I spoke to Harris, Walid, and Marwa. I didn't speak to Armin because I knew what he was going to say. I know the mind of Armin pretty well, I think. And he's a very straightforward person, and he made no bones about the fact that it's not offensive. So I knew the intention behind the photo, and it was not malicious in the slightest. The third thing is that offense should not be the barometer by which we limit our free speech. Just because you are offended should not be the reason why I'm not allowed to do something. You know, and why are you offended? You're offended on behalf of people who are dead, okay, and who face the same kind of persecution that we face. And the third thing is that no one could give me a consistent answer on what an appropriate picture would be to take with the Berlin Memorial.
There was another.
I agree. I wouldn't see it as offensive either. I think people should be able to. I mean, is it offensive because it was ex-Muslims? Is that what people are saying? Is ex-Muslims, and that's the reason it's offensive because people take pictures at memorials all the damn time.
It's interesting as hell. Now, if it had been a group of Jewish people, would there have been the same outrage? I wonder that.
Well, I think some people wanted to smear us because we're ex-Muslims, and other people thought that we shouldn't have stood on it. But Walid, who was one of the guys in the photo, he had taken a photo just standing next to it, and he still got backlash for it. So my question was like, and I saw that, I was like, you took one really like sensible photo with the Berlin Wall, and you still got shit for it. So what is an appropriate, like, tell me what an appropriate picture was. And some people just dismissed me and was like, you're being immature. Okay, I asked a question. And then other people just gave me like really differing answers. Some people were just super offended and were like, you just should not have posted it because you knew it was going to cause outrage. I don't think they did. I don't think they did. And to be fair, everything we do causes outrage. I could say banana and it would cause outrage. So is that why I should have posted?
Yeah, Ray Comfort would be outraged if you mentioned banana. He's the banana guy.
I've noticed that on Twitter. The little bit that I'm on Twitter, it's pretty much whatever you say, they're gonna come at you no matter what.
Hey, real quick, Sydney, in the live chat says, I don't know where she learned that the Jews built the pyramids. I believe when Fay mentioned that, she was granting a premise that other people hold to make another point. Isn't that correct? You were just granting that premise.
Yeah. Look, people have told me since I made that comment, so many people have told me, actually, that's a myth. And I'm like, okay, but I'm positing an argument. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you're missing the point by saying that that's a myth. I could like it's like saying a hypothetical and then being like, well, your hypothetical is not in line with actual. It's a hypothetical.
Yeah, and guess what? People don't care what facts are when it comes to these fictions they believe. They don't care that facts show that the Jews weren't really slaves and didn't build the pyramids. These people think that, and that's, you're granting the premise. You're not saying you think that, you're saying they think that.
Well, right, and and the thing is too,
the premise that I was
just
that I was trying to make. Sorry, go on. I always interrupt you.
No, all I was going to say is, and I'm not saying Sydney is saying this, but then what a lot of disingenuous people do is they will take, such in this situation where Fay is granting a premise that is posited by others to make a further point, then they will take that granting of the premise or that steel man of someone else's argument and say, well, look, this is what that person believes. And it's like, well, no, they're granting someone else's premise to further the conversation. They're not saying they believe that, but go ahead. I'm sorry, Fay.
I'm not shy about the fact that I'm ignorant. Okay. I make no bones about saying I don't know, because if I don't know, I don't know. But the point that I was trying to make is that there are places of oppression everywhere. How many pieces of American, memorabilia, like statues and buildings were built by slaves, and you still take pictures with them? How many burial mounds are there where people act like fucking dicks around them, Like, how many pieces of historical buildings, statues, walls, I don't even fucking know. Like, how many pieces of that terracotta army? How many people go to that it's a graveyard. How many people go there and take pictures with those people? And if we talk about Egyptians, the pyramids were burial places, right? Where the pharaohs are they're buried in there or whatever. How many people were buried with them? And you still take pictures of that place. These are pictures representing the death and suffering of other people, but we make no bones about them because, let's be real, our lives would be really difficult if I couldn't take a picture with my fucking house because someone died in it.
Yeah. or people going to the concentration camps. Like I've been seeing, people talking about, the entitled white girls taking pictures at
I mean, I think it's stupid. I wouldn't do it.
And it's you're going to experience these places. I would probably want to take pictures as well. Like, you want to remember these occasions. And as you said, if nobody took pictures of these places, you wouldn't know where they are. Like, you wouldn't know about them. The whole point is to memorialize them,
And the thing with the Berlin Memorial is that people aren't actually buried there. They're just meant to represent the people that died. It's not actual graves that are there. And it is an art piece that is meant to represent coffins. And to some extent, I get it. Like, this atrocity only happened within the last 100 years. So I understand people's, emotions about it. And I understand the outrage. I just don't understand why it was so huge.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I can understand in some instances the argument, but as Fay alluded to earlier, if someone's offended, it's on the the person who feels offended, and it shouldn't preclude people from speaking.
By no means.
But I've seen pictures that people have taken, they're at Auschwitz, where this one picture comes to mind where this young girl, maybe in her late teens or early 20s, was standing on the actual tracks that brought Jews in to be gassed. and she was doing a selfie and doing like a model's pose and doing the duck lips. I mean, that I can kind of see the argument in that being a little disrespectful. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, it's the world we live in. Like people get outraged. Like as you said, it's your choice to get outraged over shit, and I'm not going to take away that legitimacy from you.
Yeah,
but that's your
absolutely.
choice that you made.
But also, should a dumb kid be flamed online because she took a picture somewhere?
no,
Yeah, exactly.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I mean, it's just the
The
world we
argument's
live in.
over.
For the first
Up against-
time in human history, we walk around with portable computers on our hips. We can do these things now. They could never do it before.
And I'm by like no means saying that you're not allowed to be. You're completely allowed to be offended. You're completely allowed to be offended. In the same way that if someone pissed on my mother's grave, I would be allowed to be offended. But would I go out of my way to physically remove that man from the premises? No. I don't know what fucking beef he had with my mom. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
he's just a homeless man. Maybe he's crazy. I don't.
And it's a different
We live-
conversation. Like we should respect
Yeah.
tradition. We should respect holy sites. What's important to culture. It's a different conversation. Like say what's happening in Hawaii on the mountain there with the telescopes and taking sacred land, and people going and being a part of history, recording themselves a part of history. These places are made into tourist traps, basically. And you're going to get that if you're promoting tourism. You're going to get that. There's no reason for outrage here. If you're going to be outraged about something like this, start looking into what's going on in Hawaii and get outraged about how they're actually taking cultural land from people, and get outraged about that, because that's what's important. Like, going to a tourist site and taking pictures, I just don't see the problem of it, unless you're like literally pissing on that monument or spitting on it or something. Yeah, but taking a picture on it, no, not at all.
Real quick, and I don't know if you had seen this. Like I said, you were on the screen way back when. I don't even know if Les is still here, but Les Nagy had sent in a super chat, $20 Australian, and he says, "Hey Naka, my favorite channel, my friend, my best to you, buddy."
Yeah, I did put it up, but I didn't read it. Yeah, Les is my brother from down under. He doesn't exist, by the way, because Australia doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, and Australia, because it's a flat Earth, as we all know. And I'm going to just assume, I didn't see this earlier, but I noticed Maynard Saves was here earlier when we started the stream, and I'm just going to assume that he put in some kind of super chat that says "smoke weed every day," because
I'm sure that happened. I didn't see it either, but if he was here, I'm sure he did. That's the thing at StreamYard. It's really hard to see the super chats. So yeah, hopefully I didn't miss any super chats. My daughter's giving me the eye. It's like, Daddy, it's time. Yeah, there's a bee in her bedroom.
Oh.
So great conversation. John, I'll let you take us out of here. Any final questions for Fay, and let Fay plug her channel one more time. See, when I have 3 people and I do like banners like this one, then it covers up Fay. You can't see Fay.
I was going to ask you earlier if there was any way you could switch positions with me and Fay so she wasn't getting covered up every time something was on the screen there.
See, that makes my ugly face too big. So we'll go back to that.
But this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me for this, and let me do my shilling first, because I want to give Fay the last word. Again, and I will make sure, or Knock will make sure that it's in the description, or he may have already put it in the description. Please help our friend Puffalopagus with his GoFundMe. His father passed last week, and he really needs help paying for the funeral. I put it in the link in the live chat several times. Later today at 4:00, on the Amateur Conversationalist, I'm going to have Nick Suter on, and I put that link in the live chat several times as well. And coming up this Wednesday, I will be back here on A Raging Atheist, and as luck would have it, of Raging Atheists, is off this Wednesday. So he will be my guest again, just as he was last week. I'm not sure what we'll be talking about yet, but it is sure to be interesting and fun. And as well, Saturday nights on the GDC, I do a stream. And Knock has, as luck would have it, a rare Saturday off on the 19th, and he'll be joining me on the GDC that night with a few other folks to talk about something.
Yeah, I'll be filming with Utah Outcast that day, and they're in Utah, so they start late, which is super late for me. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting day, and I'll be on the GDC on September 19th.
Great.
So Fay, please give us your thoughts and shill away on anything you want folks to know about.
I don't really know how to plug. I'm still getting used to doing it on my own channel, but I have a channel and I have a very active Twitter. You can check them out if you want to. I don't feel like I need to. I'm gonna run on my own merit. If you like me, check me out. But I upload a couple of times a week. I haven't figured out how many times because this summer fucked me up because Armin was here and I did like way more than I should have done, and now people expect me to like upload every fucking day, which I can't do. But a lot of my content is just me rambling about one thing, barely edit. I'm like, it's my channel's very low maintenance. You just have it playing in the background most of the time. But yeah, I have a channel and that's my main platform, along with Twitter, where I feel as though I'm a little bit more active there if you want to know about all my goings on. I also do artwork, but that is very subjective to when I feel like doing it. But you can check me out on Instagram. My handle is @AngusSpreadThin. And I have the same handle on Twitter.
Awesome.
Yeah. Fascinating discussion. I feel like I've learned things that I haven't learned yet from this discussion. I'm gonna have to go back and really look at it and absorb it. Thank you so much for coming on, Fay. Thank you, John, for being here. Maybe next time Ali will be here as well, and yeah, we can just continue these conversations. We need to talk about this more, and I think you're a great voice for what you're doing. You're a great voice, but you're also a voice in a group of great voices of what you are doing. And I would like to start speaking to more people that are with you in your cause. Let's really combine our communities because we're the same.
Yeah. I would love to. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming.
I want to say something real quick before we head out. And I was actually going to make a quick little video on my own channel about this, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there right here on Raging Atheist. Breaking news, all right? I'm inspired by what Raging Atheist does, and I've been inspired by my interaction with a lot of ex-Muslims on Twitter, Fay among them. I'm going to make a little bit of a change to how the amateur conversationalist goes. I'm still going to be doing the one-on-ones and talking to people about things, talking to people from the YouTube community about things that maybe people might not know about them. But I want to add to that I want to make it a regular thing on my channel to invite ex-Muslims on, such as Fay, to tell their story.
Please do.
And
Please do.
Yeah, and so I when I originally started the channel, it was for the one-on-ones, and then I was going to try to mediate discussions between people that might be at odds with one another. I'm going to jettison that part of it, which I haven't done yet, and so now my channel, I want to dedicate it to putting the word out and letting ex-Muslims come on and tell their story.
Yeah, and I have an open invitation as well. I want more of these conversations. I've had a limited scope of focus. I get obsessive, so I go at Christianity nonstop. But Christianity is small potatoes, in my opinion, honestly. When you look at the atrocities of the world. So thank you so much for coming on and shedding some light.
I have one question. Do you guys consider yourselves anti-theists?
Yeah, so this has been a very talked about topic here. So I had my phase to where I didn't think I was an anti-theist anymore, and I kind of went hard at anti-theists. But then, just breaking it down farther than that is like, what types of anti-theists are there? And I think that there's mainly two types. One is anti-belief and one is anti-harm. I consider myself an anti-harm anti-theist. I'm not going to look down on people for having a belief, but I will look down on beliefs that I find harmful.
Yeah,
and go at them hardcore. So yeah, I think I am an anti-theist, but I'm a more moderate anti-theist than I was maybe 6 or 7 months ago.
Like I've said on this channel more than once and elsewhere on YouTube, if you were to go back a year and a half, 2 years, and look at comments I may have left in comment sections, or maybe things I may have said in streams, then you would definitely say, yeah, boy, that guy's an anti-theist. Because I was one of those people that would think that, well, boy, you believe in God? Well, I don't think God exists, so you must be delusional, or you must be irrational, those type of things. But I've come to the point now where I realize that just because someone has a belief that I don't agree with, that in no way, makes them delusional. And I also believe that, while religion can be harmful, not all people that are religiously minded are harmful. And I would say the vast majority of all theists are just good people living their lives.
I think that everyone in their own way. I think that everyone in their own way is delusional. I mean, to some extent. I mean, yes, religious people may be a bit more delusional, but even theistic people, even the most rational theistic people, are delusional, because I just think that that's the human condition. My contention with anti-theism is that we always hear this argument from religious people that there's no way that atheists could be moral because they don't have religion. And then you look at their religion and their religion just isn't moral. And then you wonder if that person says that if they didn't have, if someone didn't hypothetically have religion, they would be immoral. It really makes you think, if that person who's saying that didn't have religion, what would they be like? I think that's the only reason why I wouldn't consider myself an anti-theist, because I feel as though, and there's two reasons actually, that's one of them. I feel as though religion, even if it's not, I feel like it cannot be synonymous with morality, because it isn't. I feel like it does keep people, to some extent, people who have no morals, moral. And the other thing is, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to be afraid of the dark. People don't know what comes after death. And if that delusion, keeps them sane, and it gives them some shred of hope for, the finality of dying, I don't think that that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think I'm right along the same line. Like I'm against if it does harm, but like if you believe in something and it helps you and it makes you a better person, like if it truly helps you to get through this life and feel comfortable in your skin, I'm all for it. It's just if it makes you feel like you should go and throw that gay person off the highest peak, well, then that's where I come in and I'm like, no, that's not okay. So yeah, like I'm the same way. Like I'm not anti-theist, where I think some atheists would love to see a world without religion. I don't, because as you said, I think I've known people personally that have told me that without God, they'd either kill themselves or they'd commit these atrocious crimes because they wouldn't have morality anymore. And I'm like, well, please keep believing in God, because I don't ever want you to do either of those things.
But I also think that it's not realistic. It's not a realistic goal, because people are delusional. People are crazy.
Well, yeah,
if we're being real.
And the only way you get rid of religion is by committing atrocity yourself, right? Like you would have to weed out the religious minded and get rid of them,
absolutely.
like. So I mean, when you make that argument, you're arguing for genocide, and no, I'm not good with that.
I think even if you did do that, even if you did hypothetically, and this is going to be taken so out of context. But even if hypothetically we were to go around and kill every single religious person, that does not mean that those ideas would just die. Because they're
Exactly.
ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd never get rid of it, like ever. Maybe in 20,000 years we'll look back at our petty belief
We'll have
systems.
new religions.
But they'll have new
At
ideas,
that
and
point.
they'll be worshiping the golden planet somewhere. Who knows?
We'll all be Scientologists.
Yeah, and what Faye said a few minutes ago, because I've thought that for a long time, is that belief in God comes out of fear of your own mortality. People don't want to believe that they'll die, just like
That's the ultimate question. We don't want to die, so we got to create this narrative, I think, that allows us to go on.
I think in my brain, because I don't believe in God anymore, and I have intrusive thoughts. It's like a theme for me.
Oh yeah, me too.
Where I'll think that someone who submits to a God that's cruel it is weak in some way because they're afraid to die, but that's such an unfair judgment to make on someone. Because I'm very cause-driven, I always have been, so I'm always fighting something. But everyone isn't like that. People are scared, and I think that that's okay. I think that that's okay for you to be scared and for you to invest in some kind of hope so that you're not as afraid anymore.
Well, I've said for the longest time that God is not a being, and I'm saying this flippantly, tongue-in-cheek. God is not a being. God is an acronym that stands for getting over dying, or greatly obfuscating death. Okay, so that's
I think that it's natural for us when we come out that we want to have anger and be angry towards what we felt like held us back, but ultimately you got to have legitimate reasons of your complaints, and I believe in a God to me is not a legitimate reason to dismiss somebody. I'm a humanist. I want to accept all humans. I want to see the empathy. I think, I'm the same way. Like I will just rush in and I will just go get so really like OCD about my causes and what I'm going after. And it makes it hard for me sometimes to understand why other people aren't like that, but they're just not like me. And they're not, not all people are able to overcome their fears and go at things.
But I think that was the hardest pill for me to swallow while I was religious. It's a much easier pill for me to swallow now because I get that everybody's fucking crazy. But while I was religious, that never occurred to me that people just aren't like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Allie makes a good point. Because we're focusing on the Abrahamic religion. Pagans don't believe in the gods out of fear. That's an Abrahamic thing. And I think that when I was a Buddhist, I didn't fear my deity. When I was a Native American spiritualist, I didn't fear my deity. I do think that it is.
You did fear dying, right?
Say what?
You did fear dying, though, right?
Oh yeah,
that was why you did that.
Yeah, I definitely fear dying. I don't anymore. Like that's the sad thing. Like now that I'm an atheist, I'm like, shit. I get this life. I'm taking advantage of the time I have.
Yeah.
So
let me grab hold of this here because we're kind of like doing like we did last night, and we're having the longest goodbye ever.
Yeah, I know, and my daughter's like giving it that.
Yeah, and I see her. I can see her kind of on the edge of the screen, looming over you at times, like, "Daddy, come on!" And I have some things as well to do. So let's kick it over to Nakasuchi to give us a final goodbye and close things up.
Yeah, I will be having a stream Tuesday night with Richard and a stream either really late Tuesday or Wednesday with that Christian vlogger. So look forward to that, guys. I'm going to be setting up a new schedule for shows. So Saturday nights didn't work. Might go a week without a show and just do John's show this week and then get back on a new schedule next week with new guests. So yeah, keep paying attention. And Faye, please come back anytime. You're always welcome on my channel. We will see you guys very soon.
Be the conversation.
Yeah, you got it in there, John.